Okay, picture this. You're driving, right? It's just a normal Tuesday. Maybe it's raining a little and you're thinking about, I don't know, what to make for dinner or that email you forgot to send.
The mundane stuff.
Exactly, the mundane stuff. And then the radio shuffles or your playlist algorithm throws a total curveball and a song comes on.
Hmm.
And it's not just any song, it's that song, the one from when you were, say, 16, 17 years old.
The time travel song.
The time travel song, that's perfect. Because the reaction is just, it's instant. It's not an intellectual thing like, oh, I remember this track. It's visceral.
Oh.
You can feel it in your chest. You can almost smell your high school gym or feel the cheap fabric on the seats of your first car. It's happy and it's sad and it's just overwhelming.
But for just a split second, you're not you now. You're you then.
We're 17 again, completely. And what's wild is that this is a universal human experience.
It absolutely is.
But here's the thing. The question we're really going to get into today. Why? I mean, why that specific window of time? Why does the music from our late teens have such a, I don't know, a stranglehold on our brains?
And is it just a nice feeling?
Right. Is this nostalgia just a warm, fuzzy blanket, or is it actually a really sophisticated biological tool that, and this is the important part, we might be starting to misuse?
That's the core question, isn't it? Because we tend to just dismiss nostalgia as sentimentality. You know, oh, he's just being nostalgic.
Is it a weakness?
Exactly. But the stack of research we have pulled together for this deep dive, it suggests something else entirely. It suggests that nostalgia is, well, there's a biological survival mechanism, a psychological glue, a political weapon, and now a technological frontier.
And we have a huge stack today. We're looking at what is basically the definitive 2023 study on this phenomenon, the reminiscence bump. That's by Renwick and Woolhouse.
The massive one.
Massive. And then we have some brand new neuroscience. I mean, papers just published in 2025 in Frontiers in Psychology and Human Brain Mapping. We're also diving into Simon Reynolds' incredible cultural critique, Retromania.
Which is a bit of a classic at this point.
It is, but it's more relevant than ever. And to top it off, a slightly terrifying report from Andreessen Horowitz on the future of generative AI in music.
So the mission here is to really figure this out. Is nostalgia that cozy blanket that keeps us sane in a world that feels increasingly chaotic?
Or is it a trap that stops us and maybe our entire culture from actually moving forward?
Let's find out.
All right, let's start with the internal machinery, the how it works of it all. Because I think most people, myself included, assume nostalgia is just remembering stuff.
Right, I'm remembering my birthday party.
Yeah. But you've got this study here from the European Journal of Social Psychology. It's from 2018, led by a researcher named Van Tilburg. And it says, no, it's actually a very specific causal chain. It's a process.
It is. And Tilburg and his colleagues, they were trying to figure out the utility of nostalgia. From an evolutionary perspective, a trait like this doesn't usually stick around for millennia unless it's doing something useful for us.
It has a function. It's not a bug.
It's a feature. And what they found is that nostalgia reliably follows this three-step pathway to generate psychological well-being.
Okay, so walk us through it. What's step one? What kicks off this whole chain reaction?
Step one, according to their model, is social connectedness.
Social connectedness.
Yeah. So when you experience nostalgia, let's go back to that song from your prom. Your brain isn't just remembering the decorations or the bad punch.
Or the terrible suit I was wearing.
Or the terrible suit. You're remembering the people. The study shows that the primary function of a nostalgic memory is to summon the feeling of being loved, of being accepted, of being part of a group, a tribe.
So even if you haven't seen those people in 20 years...
It doesn't matter. The memory reactivates the neurological pattern of that bond. It's like a booster shot of belonging.
So it's basically an antidote to loneliness. Your brain has this built-in library of moments where you felt connected, and it can just pull one off the shelf when you're feeling isolated.
Precisely. It's a profoundly pro-social emotion at its core. But that feeling of connection is what enables the next step, which I think is the really critical one. Step two is self-continuity.
Self-continuity. Okay, that sounds a bit like corporate jargon, but in psychology, this is a huge concept, right?
It's fundamental to having a stable identity. Self-continuity is, it's the feeling that the you from the past is meaningfully connected to the you of the present,
That you're the same person.
that you're the same person, which sounds obvious, but think about it. Your cells are completely different. Your job, your relationships, your beliefs, your body. Everything changes. Life is, by its nature, chaotic and fragmented.
It's a series of disconnected chapters.
It can feel that way. And without a sense of self-continuity, people feel unmoored. They feel like they don't have a coherent story. Nostalgia, the study argues, is the thread that stitches those disparate chapters of your life together.
So it's the narrator of your own story. It whispers in your ear, hey, remember that kid who was so nervous at prom? That's you. And remember that person who graduated college? Also you. And the person sitting in traffic right now, still you. It's all one movie.
That's a perfect analogy. It reassures your brain that you are still the protagonist of a coherent narrative. You haven't just been dropped into a new story halfway through.
And this sense of a continuous self, this leads to the final step.
It does. That feeling of continuity directly fosters step 3, meaning in life, or as they call it in the literature, MIL.
MIL meaning in life.
Yes, the study found that this specific pathway from social connectedness to self-continuity, which then leads to a boost in meaning in life, is a powerful buffer against what psychologists call existential threat.
Meaning like the fear of death.
Well,
Or feeling insignificant.
both. When people are confronted with feelings of meaninglessness, or they're reminded of their own mortality and experiments, their brains almost automatically reach for a nostalgic memory. It's a reflexive action to restore a sense of purpose and significance.
Wow. So it's not just daydreaming, it's a psychological immune response. If I have a terrible day at work and I feel like a complete failure, my brain might unconsciously cue up the memory of winning a high school soccer game.
To remind you that your story contains success.
To remind me that my life has meaning outside of this one bad day.
Exactly. It's an existential resource. It's not about living in the past. It's about using the past to make the present feel coherent and worthwhile.
That's the psychology. That's the why. But we have some incredible new data. I mean, this stuff is from 2025, basically hot off the presses, that shows us what this actually looks like inside the brain.
This is the really exciting part.
This is the Habibi et al. Study from human brain mapping. They're looking at the physical evidence.
They are. It was a fascinating setup. They used fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, to scan people's brains in real time. And they were very careful to distinguish between just familiar music and truly nostalgic music.
What's the difference there?
Well, a familiar song might be, say, a jingle from a commercial you've heard 100 times. You know it, but it doesn't have any personal meaning. A nostalgic song is one that's tied directly to your own life story.
Right. Twinkle, twinkle, little star is familiar. Mr. Brightside is nostalgic. For me, anyway.
Exactly. And when they played the truly nostalgic music, they found a very distinct neural signature. Something unique happened. Nostalgia activated 2 major brain networks at the exact same time. And these are networks that don't usually fire together so intensely.
Okay, what were the networks?
First, you get a massive activation in the default mode network, or the DMN.
The DMN. I've heard of this. This is the brain's idle state, right, when you're just daydreaming.
Precisely. It's the network responsible for self-reflection, autobiographical memory, thinking about the future, thinking about others' perspectives. It's basically the story of me center in the brain.
Okay, so that part makes sense. You're thinking about your past, so the autobiographical memory network lights up.
Right. But here's the kicker. At the exact same time, nostalgia lit up the brain's reward system. We're talking about the basal ganglia, the ventral striatum.
The dopamine centers, the parts of the brain that fire up when you eat sugar or win money or have sex. The pleasure centers.
The very same ones. And this is what's so strange and powerful. Usually the reward system is focused on the present or the immediate future. It's about seeking the next reward. The default mode network is often ruminating on the past.
They're looking in opposite directions.
For the most part. But nostalgia builds a neural bridge between them. Your brain is literally rewarding itself, giving itself a little hit of dopamine for reflecting on its own history. It forges a powerful link between the concept of self and the feeling of pleasure.
That is an incredibly potent cocktail. It's one thing to remember something, it's another thing for your brain to give you a cookie for doing it.
And that explains why it feels so good and why we seek it out. It's a self-reinforcing loop.
And it gets even more specific, doesn't it? There's another 2025 study here from Frontiers in Psychology. This one's by Hugh and his colleagues. They used a different technology, EEG, to look at brain waves.
Right, EEG measures electrical activity, so it gives you a different kind of picture, more about the brain state. And they found something really interesting. Modality matters.
Modality. You mean how you consume the nostalgia, like listening versus watching?
Exactly. They compared the brain's response to audio-only nostalgia. So just hearing that song from your youth against audiovisual nostalgia. So hearing the song while watching the original music video.
Ah, the full YouTube rabbit hole
The
experience.
full experience. And they found that the alpha wave response in the brain was significantly stronger when people got both the audio and the video.
And what are alpha waves associated with?
It's a state of relaxed alertness, of deep internal processing. It's considered a key signature of memory retrieval and inward-directed attention. It suggests a deeper level of immersion.
So the visual cues. Seeing the terrible 90s fashion, the grainy film quality, the specific way the singer moved, all of that acts as a force multiplier.
It does. It recruits more of your brain's sensory cortexes into the process. You're not just remembering a sound, you're remembering a whole world, a whole aesthetic. It makes the time travel more high fidelity.
Which completely explains why it's so easy to lose 3 hours watching old music videos and commercials on YouTube. Your brain is getting a much richer, more satisfying hit than just listening to the playlist on its own.
It's a super stimulus for the nostalgia system.
And this isn't just, fun trivia for us. This specific neural mechanism has profound therapeutic applications, particularly with conditions like Alzheimer's and dementia.
This is one of the most hopeful areas of this research. We've all seen those viral videos.
Oh, they're incredible. The patient is nonverbal, maybe hasn't recognized their own family in months, and a caregiver puts headphones on them and plays an old big band track or an Elvis song.
And they light up, their eyes open, they start tapping their feet. Sometimes they even start singing along and sharing memories. It's like the music finds a key to a locked room.
How does that work? How does it bypass the damage from the disease?
It works because the brain regions that encode and store musical memory are, for some reason, remarkably resilient. They're often spared from the ravages of Alzheimer's until the very, very late stages of the disease. It's often the last coherent memory system to go.
It's more durable than other types of memory.
Much more. And because of that powerful connection we just talked about, the one between the memory center and the reward system music can act as a kind of a back door to the cell.
A backdoor.
Yeah. For a patient who can't consciously access their autobiographical memories anymore, the music can trigger them automatically. It can pull those memories out, improve their mood, reduce agitation, and enhance their emotional well-being, all without pharmaceuticals. It's incredible.
It's like the music is so deeply hardwired into our identity that even when the rest of the building is falling apart, that one wire stays connected.
That's a great way of putting it.
Which brings us perfectly to the big one, the reminiscence bump. Because we keep talking about music from your past, but the research is clear. It's not just any past. It's a very, very specific slice of it.
This is where that huge Renwick and Woolhouse study from 2023 comes in. This was a monster of a study. They analyzed data from more than 4,800 participants.
And they were looking for the peak,
Yeah.
right? The moment in life where the music we hear becomes the most emotionally significant.
Exactly. And they found it. Overwhelmingly, the music that generates this intense nostalgic response, the music that is most easily recalled and most emotionally resonant for the rest of our lives, comes from the age range of roughly 16 to 20 years old.
16 to 20. It's such a tight window. 4 or 5 years out of an entire lifetime. And the study makes a huge point of saying this is universal.
That, for me, was the most stunning part of the whole paper. They gathered data from 102 different countries. They looked at people from the U.S., the Philippines, Romania, the U.K., Brazil. It didn't matter.
The culture didn't change it.
Nope, it didn't matter if you were a man or a woman. It didn't even matter what kind of music you were listening to. Metal, pop, rock, dance, folk. Everyone has a reminiscence bump, and it almost always peaks in late adolescence.
So why then? Why that specific window? Why not age 30? I felt like I was having a pretty significant time at 30. A lot was happening. Why isn't that my bump?
There are a couple of major theories that work together, and the first one is purely biological. It's a process called synaptic pruning.
Right, the brain's spring cleaning.
Exactly. During that late teen, early 20s window, your brain is undergoing a massive final renovation. It's frantically cutting away weak or unused neural connections and reinforcing the ones that you use all the time. You are literally architecting your adult brain during those years.
So whatever you're feeding it during that construction phase gets baked into the foundation.
It gets poured into the wet cement of your mind. The sensory input you get, especially the music you listen to on repeat over and over again, gets hardwired in a way that just doesn't happen with the same intensity later in life.
So it's structural. The
Yeah.
music becomes part of the physical brain.
It is. But that's only half the story. The other theory is psychological, and it's called the identity formation theory.
This is about figuring out who you are.
It's the moment in your life where you are most actively trying to answer the question, who am I? You're breaking away from your parents, you're forming your own social circles, and music is. It's a primary tool for that.
You're not just listening to music, you're auditioning for a tribe.
100%. You're making a statement. You decide, I am a punk, or I am a hip-hop head, or I'm a theater kid. The music isn't just background noise. It's a social uniform. It's a badge of identity.
And because that's the period where you essentially draft the constitution of you, you keep referring back to that document for the rest of your life to understand who you are.
Precisely. The two theories work in tandem. The brain is uniquely plastic, synaptic pruning, at the exact moment your social self is most in need of definition, identity formation. It's a perfect storm for creating permanent musical memories.
There was another really cool, kind of weird concept in that Renwick study. They called it the cascade effect.
Yes,
Yeah.
the cascading reminiscence bumps. This is so fascinating. It explains why you might feel a powerful sense of nostalgia for music that was a hit 10 and 15 years before you were even born.
Right. I have a huge soft spot for Fleetwood Mac, but I was definitely not around buying the Rumors album when it dropped in '77.
But your parents probably were.
Oh, for sure. It was the soundtrack to their road trips.
And that's the cascade. The researchers, Krumhans and Zipnik, who first described this, found that we essentially inherit our parents' nostalgia. If your mom was 18 in 1980, she was playing 80s music in the car and in the kitchen while you were a toddler.
So her reminiscence bump becomes the background radiation of my early childhood.
It becomes your hand-me-down nostalgia.
Yeah.
The study shows that most people have these secondary, smaller bumps for music that peaked in popularity about 20 to 25 years before their own birth.
It's amazing. It shows how music acts as this invisible thread connecting generations within a family.
It does. It complicates the data a little bit, but in a really beautiful way.
Now, this study also touched on something called recency bias. It's not like we're only listening to old music. We do like new songs.
Oh, absolutely. Recency bias is a powerful effect. If you ask a 20-year-old what their favorite song is, they're very likely to name a current hit. We're naturally drawn to the new and the now.
So how do those two forces interact, the pull of the past versus the pull of the present?
Well, the study found that the balance shifts as we age. When you're young, recency bias is very strong. But as people get into their 30s, 40s, and beyond, that effect starts to fade. The reminiscence bump, the music from their youth, starts to exert a stronger and stronger gravitational pull.
So older adults become more emotionally anchored to their youth.
They do. The data suggests that for many people, the return on investment for exploring new music just isn't as high as the guaranteed emotional hit they get from the old stuff. It's not necessarily that they stop liking new things, but the nostalgic music becomes, well, it becomes home.
And that idea that, as a society, we collectively retreat to the safety of the archive, that leads us directly into the cultural side of this. Because if millions of us are doing this individually, what does that do to our collective culture? What happens to art?
This is where we have to pivot to Simon Reynolds and his incredible, and I think deeply prophetic, book, Retromania.
Subtitled, Pop Culture's Addiction to Its Own Past.
Reynolds is a brilliant music critic, and he wrote this back in 2011, but his argument has only gotten more potent. He argues that we've reached a point of cultural stagnation. He calls it a state of revivals of revivals.
He has this amazing metaphor that I can't get out of my head. He describes the internet, particularly YouTube, as a jumbled attic.
It's the perfect image. Think about it. Before the internet, the past was, what was in the past? It was hard to access. You had to go to a specialty record store or dig through your parents' vinyl. It had a sense of distance.
There's friction.
A lot of friction. Now, on Spotify or YouTube, a song from 1965 sits right next to a song released this morning. They are equally and instantly accessible. All of history is available all at once. Time's collapsed.
He calls it a temporality, right? The loss of a sense of time.
Yes. Reynolds argues that time has become mushy and spongiform. The past and the present just coexist on the same flat, glowing screen. So you have a teenager today whose playlist might jump from 80s synth pop to 90s grunge to 2000s R&B to 2020s trap music, all without blinking. The historical context just gets blurred.
And so Reynolds poses this really difficult question. Where is the future? Where is the new?
He points out pretty convincingly that if you listen to a lot of indie or even mainstream pop music from the 2010s and 2020s, it often sounds like it could have been made in the 80s and 90s. The aesthetics, the synth sounds, the drum machines, the guitar tones, they're all recycled.
He contrasts this with the 20th century, where each decade had such a distinct revolutionary sound.
A massive jump. I mean, the
Uh-huh.
difference between music in 1955 and 1965 is staggering. The difference between 67 and 77, from psychedelia to punk and disco, it's like a different planet.
Oh,
There were these explosions of the new. Reynolds argues that we've largely stopped doing that. We've shifted from a culture of innovation to a culture of curation.
the musician as an archivist or a DJ rather than an inventor.
Exactly. Your art is about how cleverly you can combine and recontextualize elements from the past. Your identity as an artist is defined by your taste and your ability to curate the archive.
He used a really specific example that I thought nailed this point perfectly. He talked about the freak folk movement.
Yes, this was a fantastic comparison. He contrasts someone like Eliza Carthy, she's a traditional British folk singer, with the American freak folk artists of the early 2000s, like Devendra Banhart.
And his point was that for Eliza Carthy, folk music wasn't a choice or an aesthetic, it was in her blood. Her parents were folk legends. She grew up in that tradition. She lived it.
It was her native language. For the freak folk artists, he argues, folk music was something they discovered through old records. They were mediating their connection to the past through recordings. They weren't living the tradition. They were, in a sense, play acting, a time period they'd never experienced.
It's almost like a form of historical reenactment or cosplay.
Reynolds suggests it is. And he's not necessarily saying their music is bad. He's just pointing out that it's a fundamentally different creative process. It's a simulation of the past, not an extension of it.
And his big worry is that this constant enjoying the archive stops us from taking the risks required to invent the future. If we're all so comfortable and cozy in this jumbled attic, why would we ever bother to go outside and build a new house?
It's the path of least resistance. It's easier to recombine known successful elements than to create something truly alien and new.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second here. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Maybe culture has just reached a point where we have a century of incredible recorded music to draw from. Maybe the next stage of creativity is synthesis. If an artist can combine the best of 70s funk with 90s shoegaze, isn't that a new form of creativity?
It's definitely a type of creativity,
Okay.
and a lot of amazing artists come from it. But Reynolds' concern is about cultural stagnation on a macro level. He's asking, if a historian from the year 2300 listens back to the music of the 2020s, will they hear a unique sonic fingerprint that defines our era?
Or will they just hear a very sophisticated collage of the 20th century?
That's the question.
Yeah.
And it's a haunting one. It's the cultural trap of nostalgia.
But there's an even darker trap, a much more immediate one. We have to talk about the political side of this. Because if nostalgia's primary function is to create a sense of belonging and identity, it can also be used to create a sense of exclusion.
This is where the conversation gets really heavy. It's a critical distinction to make. We're looking at a 2021 study by Beller and colleagues published in Frontiers in Psychology. And their whole paper hinges on separating two different kinds of nostalgia. Personal nostalgia versus national nostalgia.
Lay out the difference first.
Personal nostalgia is everything we've been talking about so far. It's your memory of your first kiss, your grandmother's cooking, that song from prom. The research consistently shows that this type of nostalgia is generally a very positive psychological force.
It makes you feel good.
It does more than that. It's been shown to increase empathy, reduce prejudice, make you more charitable, and more pro-social. In short, remembering your own good old days tends to warm you up and make you a nicer, more open person.
Okay, so what's national nostalgia?
The national nostalgia is different. It's not about your own life. It's a longing for the good old days of your country. It's a collective sentiment, a belief that the nation as a whole was better, purer, stronger, or more unified in the past, and that it has declined since then.
And this study looks specifically at how this played out in the U.S. political landscape.
It did. They focused on the 2016 U.S. election and the political rhetoric around the slogan, "Make America Great Again." And I want to be very clear here, we're just impartially reporting on the findings of the study.
Of course. What did the data show?
They found a very strong, statistically significant correlation. A person's level of national nostalgia was a powerful predictor of their support for Donald Trump. Crucially, their level of personal nostalgia was not.
So wait, loving your own childhood memories didn't predict how you'd vote, but loving your country's supposed golden age did.
Correct. The two types of nostalgia were completely uncorrelated in their political effects. They are separate psychological constructs. And so the researchers dug deeper. They wanted to know the mechanism. Why does national nostalgia lead to this specific political outcome? And what they found is that it's deeply linked to something called outgroup threat.
Outgroup threat. Define that for us.
Outgroup threat is the perception that outsiders, people who are not part of your perceived in-group, whether that's based on race, religion, or nationality, pose a danger to your group's well-being.
And this threat can be, what, economic?
It can be. That's what they call realistic threat, the idea that they are taking our jobs or they are using our resources. But it can also be what they call symbolic threat, which is the fear that they are changing our culture, our values, our way of life.
And the study found that national nostalgia is basically a defense mechanism against this perceived threat.
That's the argument they make. The logic goes like this. If you feel that the present is chaotic, threatening, and you don't recognize your country anymore,
you retreat to the memory of a time when you did recognize it, a time when things felt simpler, more stable, more like us.
Precisely. You long for a past that felt secure. And the study makes the crucial point that this is often a longing for a past that never was.
An imagined past.
A highly edited, idealized, and often homogenized view of history. National nostalgia tends to edit out the difficult parts, the social strife, the inequality, the injustices, and it leaves you with this warm, golden hour photograph of a perfect, unified past.
This connects right back to that idea of self-continuity we talked about at the beginning, but it's happening at a national level. It's about national identity discontinuity.
That's the exact parallel the authors draw. When a group feels its collective identity is threatened or has become discontinuous with its past, it can trigger this powerful nostalgic defense.
And the study got even more specific, didn't it, about how this intersected with racial identity?
It did. They found that for white Republicans in their sample, the combination of high racial identity salience, which means feeling that being white is a central and important part of who you are, combined with high levels of national nostalgia, was the strongest predictor of their political support. It's using a specific version of the past to shore up an identity that feels under attack in the present.
So, to sum up the study's argument, while personal nostalgia tends to build bridges between people by tapping into universal human experiences,
National nostalgia can be used to build walls. It draws a line around a real version of the nation based on an imagined past and defines who belongs inside that wall and who remains outside. It shows how this deeply ingrained biological mechanism can be mobilized for political ends.
And now, as if that weren't complicated enough, we are about to hand the keys to this incredibly powerful psychological mechanism over to machines.
Which brings us to our final frontier, technology. Specifically, the Andreessen Horowitz, or A16zism, report on generative AI in music.
This report from 2023 basically says that we are at the mid-journey moment for music. What took the world by storm with AI image generation is now happening with audio.
The ability to generate completely new, high-quality content from a simple text prompt.
We all saw a pretty shocking glimpse of this with that Heart on My Sleeve track.
The AI Drake and the Weeknd song.
Right. It wasn't them. It was a totally anonymous creator, a ghostwriter, using AI voice models trained on their music. But it sounded so real that it fooled millions of people, got tens of millions of streams, and absolutely terrified the music industry.
It was a watershed moment because it proved that the aesthetic of a superstar, their voice, their flow, their melodic choices, can be convincingly separated from the actual human being.
But the A16's report says it goes way beyond just deep-faking famous voices. They talk a lot about the rise of functional music.
Yes. Think of apps like Endel or Brain.fm. I know you use some of that.
For focus.
And what they do is generate these infinite personalized soundscapes designed for a specific purpose, focus, sleep, relaxation. It's basically algorithmic mood music. But now imagine that technology getting exponentially better. And imagine combining it with all that reminiscence bump data we just spent an hour discussing.
Okay, this is where my brain starts to short circuit a little. So you're saying an AI could know that I was 17 years old in the year 2005. It knows I was listening to The Killers and Interpol and Modest Mouse. It knows the exact tempo and chord progressions that trigger my brain's reward system.
And it could then generate a never-ending stream of brand new music that hits those exact nostalgic buttons. It wouldn't be playing you old songs. It would be creating infinite new songs that feel old, specifically for you.
That's personalized, weaponized nostalgia on demand.
The report has a term for it, infinite songs. An AI could take your favorite track and just extend it forever, creating new verses and choruses in the same style. Or it could finally generate that new Beatles song we always dreamed of.
We kind of saw the primitive version of that with the Now and Then track, didn't we? Where Paul McCartney's team used AI to isolate John Lennon's voice from an old noisy demo tape.
Exactly. That was using AI for restoration, for archaeology. But the next step is using AI for creation. That A16Z report highlights these new workflows that are emerging, things like in-painting,
Which is what
where you have a piece of music with a gap in it, and you just tell the AI, fill in this 8-bar drum solo, or stem separation, where you can take any song from history, perfectly pull apart the vocals, the drums, the bass, and then remix them into something completely new.
So if Simon Reynolds was worried about us being stuck in the cultural attic, AI is basically a robot butler that will live in the attic with us and just rearrange the furniture in infinite combinations forever.
That is a very, very good way of putting it. That is the dystopian risk. The report explicitly asks, is AI the ultimate retromania machine? Because you have to remember, AI models are trained on the past. They learn by analyzing vast data sets of what has already existed.
So if we use them to generate our future culture, are we just condemning ourselves to live in a mathematical average of the past?
It creates the ultimate feedback loop. Our biology makes us crave the familiar. So we build technology to generate more of the familiar, which, as Reynolds argued, stops us from creating the truly new. It's a closed system.
But the report does also highlight the other side of the coin, right? The democratization aspect.
It does. And this is the utopian vision. This technology dramatically lowers the barrier to entry for music creation. You don't need to spend years learning guitar or music theory. You just need an idea and a prompt. It could lead to an unprecedented explosion of creativity from people who were previously excluded from the process.
But the question remains, will that creativity be new? Or will it just be an infinite number of people creating songs in the style of their favorite artists? That's the core tension.
And runs right into the brick wall of copyright, too.
Yeah.
The report mentions how the AI Hub community on Discord, where people were sharing these AI voice models of famous artists, got shut down by the record labels.
It's a legal minefield.
It is, although you do have outliers like the artist Rhymes, who came out and said, you know what, go ahead, use an AI model of my voice, I consider it open source. Just give me a 50% royalty split on any song you release with it.
Which is such a futuristic take. She's treating her own voice as a piece of software that she's licensing to other creators.
It's a radical idea.
Yeah.
But most of the industry is.
Yeah.
Well, they're not there yet. Not even close.
So, okay, let's try to pull all these threads together. We have covered a ton of ground here, from neuroscience to politics to AI.
We have. But there's a clear line through it all. We started with the biology, with the reminiscence bump and the brain's hardwired, evolutionary need to connect with the music of our youth, specifically ages 16 to 20, to maintain a coherent sense of self and find meaning in our lives.
Then we scaled that up to culture. We saw how that individual biological need, when aggregated across millions of people with access to the internet's archive, can lead to retromania, a culture that becomes obsessed with curating its past, arguably at the expense of inventing a future.
From there, we went to politics. We saw how that same fundamental mechanism, the psychological need for safety, meaning, continuity, can be exploited, how national nostalgia can use an idealized version of the good old days as a shield against the perceived threats of the present, which can then drive political polarization.
And finally, we ended with technology. We have now built machines, generative AI, that can automate this entire process. AI is making it easier than ever to remix, regenerate, and dwell inside the past, creating personalized nostalgia on demand.
It's all connected. The biological drive creates the market demand for the cultural products, which creates the emotional landscape for the political messaging, and now the technology has arrived to serve all of it with terrifying efficiency.
It leaves me with one final kind of provocative thought to chew on. If nostalgia is an existential resource, right, something our brains mine from our own lived past to create meaning, what happens when AI can manufacture perfect, personalized, nostalgic triggers on demand?
The synthetic past.
The synthetic past. If I can have an AI generate a song that sounds exactly like it came from my high school years, a song that perfectly triggers all those same neural pathways, but it never actually existed, does it still give me meaning? Or is it just the psychological equivalent of empty calories?
That is the billion-dollar question. It might be a bit of both. The emotional feeling it generates is real, even if the stimulus is artificial. The danger isn't necessarily the technology itself. The danger is us. It's getting so comfortable in that synthetic, warm bath of a perfect past that we refuse to get out and face the cold, messy, uncertain future.
Because the future is where we actually have to live.
Exactly. Nostalgia is a wonderful place to visit, but you really don't want to live there.
So I want to leave you, the listener, with this question. What is your reminiscence bump song? You know the one. The one that teleports you back in an instant. And next time you hear it, just ask yourself, are you remembering who you were? Or are you just curating an identity to hide from who you need to become?
That's a heavy question to end a deep dive on.
That's why we're here. Thank you so much for going on this journey with us.
It was a pleasure, as always.
And remember, this deep dive was made bespoke, just for you. We'll see you next time.